Hi, I'm Ahava Tag. Welcome back to What Did You Learn? I'm very excited to have with me here today Chris Pace, who is the Chief Digital Marketing Officer at Banner Health. Welcome so much, Chris. It's great to have you here.
Thanks for having me. I'm very excited about this.
Yeah, it's awesome. Well, I know that our audience is really going to learn a ton from your experience during the pandemic. But before we talk about that, tell us, what was your favorite ice cream during this time?
Oh, that's a great question. Pistachio, Talenti pistachio is the go-to.
That sounds really good. My daughter is very obsessed with the Talenti mint chip.
Okay.
That's her go-to.
Yeah, for some reason I can't get into the mint and chocolate thing. I don't know. Might be a sensory thing I've got going on. I don't know.
Yeah, well, I have like a whole theory about mint chocolate chip ice cream. We can pick that if you're not a big fan. So if somebody came to you, oh my gosh, a year ago, it's terrifying, and said to you, Chris, I want you to know that this unbelievable thing is about to happen to the entire world. What do you wish you would have done to prepare for it better?
Knowing that this is a marathon, not a sprint, would have been helpful context. Because I remember back in March when we sort of the world stopped, like March 16th. And, we weren't sure if it was going to be a couple weeks, a couple months. We were told we'll be returning to the office in July, and then it was, September. And so, I think be prepared for, this is going to be probably forever, or at least a change in our version of normal going forward and not just a blip.
Right. And did you have specific issues that you were dealing with at the very beginning, and how have they morphed now? Like, I know for a lot of managers, particularly at your level, the working from home thing was like, we had to get off the ground now. Like, talk to me about some of those challenges and how they seem to have morphed throughout this marathon that you thought was really going to be more of a sprint.
Like having resilience and having empathy really helped me reflect on what I needed to do, on how I show up not only at work, but at home, because, meanwhile, our kids are having to learn how to do, Zoom classrooms. I'm having to be an IT troubleshooter and also figuring out how to scale the heck out of our home infrastructure here to manage, we've got 5 kids in our house. My wife and I work from home now. She's always worked from home and I'm now new to it, or at least a year into it. And, lagging internet connections. How do we deal with that? How do we deal with dropping, from Zoom meetings? It used to be the horror of oh my God, my connection dropped. How am I going to make up for this? And now it's just a day that ends in Y. Everybody has Zoom problems or Teams problems. And so it's just that resilience of understanding what's important, how to stay focused, and how to show up with empathy and grace among your colleagues and your family members is going to be important. I hope that carries forward.
Yeah, I do too. And not just in healthcare where, like you said, people already supposedly have, that empathetic bent. Okay, so you're the Chief Digital Marketing Officer, and all of a sudden the entire focus of the pandemic is really on digital, standing up telehealth, getting people the information that they need. How did you prioritize what needed to get done every day?
That's a really good question. And I will say that sometimes it's better to be lucky than good, but it's really good to be good and lucky. So, that's
a bumper sticker right there.
It is, right? It's like Meteor 2020, and then those are the 2 favorite bumper stickers for the year. Okay, so I'll give a quick version of this. We embarked on a digital front door journey back in 2018, and really, it was about addressing pain points across the healthcare continuum, from finding a doctor, scheduling an appointment, paying your bill, accessing your medical records, and
the basics of consumerism.
The basics of consumerism, and healthcare is way behind in most of those spaces. So we built out a strategic plan, a 3-year initiative to address those pain points with digital solutions. What we didn't, anticipate, but where the luck came in, is that we were far enough in the journey. We were on year 3 of the 3-year cycle when the pandemic hit. So what it forced us to do is recognize delivering digital consumerism and reducing friction at scale. So our model was based on like, hey, there's going to be some segment of the population that's going to demand these digital solutions. And then the pandemic hits and all of a sudden it's like increased, tenfold, 100-fold. More people need to be able to access things remotely and through self-service. Meanwhile, our call center operation is experiencing, a 20-30% increase in phone call load over the previous year, and it's all COVID. So what can we do to reduce the amount of inbound calls, which saves cost, because the most expensive environment to service customer service at scale is in a call center environment. The cheapest is digital. So we were able to like listen to what the feedback was on the phone, address it with content, and it was like this nice cycle of this constant feedback loop of what do we need to address, how can we address it digitally, rinse and repeat over and over and over again. So the good news is what we had planned on using our digital solutions for actually paid off in a way that we hadn't really anticipated, but it also gave us a ton of learnings on how do we, on the other end of this, leverage the scale that we've created to grow the business again. And that's where we're kind of in this like, the balance of the scale, like, COVID vaccination's good. That also means return to elective cases potentially. And so we have to be able to communicate at scale and, deliver volume at scale.
Right. So let's talk about that, because I think it's actually really fascinating when you said reduce friction. You don't always hear hospital healthcare marketers talking about that kind of thing, because it's sort of in that UX realm. But, obviously, if you're in digital, you got to pull that over. So we're now trying to get, millions of people vaccinated. And there's so much friction, right? Like I try to help my parents who are in their 70s register. And where they live in Florida, they're using Eventbrite to get people through the door. It's unbelievable. So for you, from your perspective and having some time to prepare, what were you thinking about what you had to do to reduce friction for how your hospital, your health system really was going to help distribute the vaccine?
So here's the deal. What we've been focused on is making sure that we're leveraging the trust that we have in the community and ensuring the public that no matter how you get the vaccine, it's important you get the vaccine. And the reason we're doing that is a couple things. One is obviously it's the right thing to do as the largest health system in the state of Arizona. We need to have a position there. It's also true to our brand because our brand is we're the wise guide. And so everything we do is about, peace of mind and comfort, but also like a trusted best friend. So we leverage that as our communication platform. And then the other thing is, the more we can do to proactively communicate, the less phone calls we get. And so we want to keep the phone calls down as much as possible so that we can, obviously keep our costs at bay, but also provide valuable information in as close to real time as possible. And, I think, Banner being in the vaccination business is not a good long-term strategy. There's just not a lot of, predictability or growth or revenue, honestly. We lose money on every time we vaccinate. Yeah. But ultimately, if we can provide truth and combat misinformation, then I think we do the public a good. And I believe that sort of attaches to, preference and affinity and all the things that matter from a brand as we sort of flip to the new normal and come out the other end.
Yeah. So let's talk about the infodemic, right? Because it's the elephant in the room. So you have all this misinformation out there. How did content, obviously, that's the love of my life. Yeah. How did you, what was your content mix? How did you say to your team, okay, we've got explaining what COVID is, we've got demystifying it, we've got, combating misinformation. Now we've got the vaccine, we've got vaccine hesitancy. Like, what did you do to make sure that your content mix was, aligning with those values of that trusted friend and that, wise advisor?
Yeah. So, Leveraging data as a guide is the first thing. And it's not enough to just look at like traffic or like, trying to dissect answer the public or bounce rates or anything like that. We have an in-house customer research team that polls our markets every week and we have like the safety tracker where we're looking at, what is the sentiment around the vaccine? What are the frequent reasons of why someone may not get it or will get it? And then we kind of bake all that in together with NLP data that we get from our call center operation to hear what are the questions people are asking, and then kind of pull that into a weekly dialogue that we call cross-channel communications strategy meetings. And it's from our inbound, which is phone, our outbound, which is our email channel, as well as our content hub, social and Facebook. Over the top of that is sort of this clinical review to make sure that what we're saying jives with how the organization's positioned on those things. So we can't necessarily operate like a newsroom. We have our earned media team that does that function. But when we write blog articles, we have to consider, do we have an expert that can speak to it? Is it a fly zone or a no-fly zone? Because there's certain things we just aren't going to talk about, and then also knowing the speed and the velocity of change with information right now. We have to make sure that we're writing to things that can hold true for so we're not having decay of the value of the content. And so that's been kind of the approach we've taken. And then on top of it, thanks to Digital Front Door, we were able to scale content. 3 years ago, we were writing about 3 blog articles a month. Last year, we wrote 420 English and Spanish. And we have no writers on our team. So we have to, we had to find a way to scale up. And we use 206 experts for those 400 and whatever articles. So, the balance, because, we don't want to get involved in COVID fatigue. And, there's only so much you can say about a single topic too. So we have to balance it with some of the things that matter to everyday health. We also don't use it as lead generation. So, it's very like high level that could work in any area. If you just so happen to be in a banner market, hey, there's a call to action for you. And that seems to have worked really well. We grew our blog traffic 440% from 2019 to 20. And this year we're like, flying out the gate.
Do you think that was because you had that data to figure out what was really relevant to your audience? Like, what do you attribute that growth to?
So it's a couple things. I think, we leveraged our trust lever with our public. So when we did when we polled our audience, our health system and doctor rate the highest of trust for anything related to COVID. Government was like at the complete opposite end of the spectrum. And then there's like, YouTube videos, QAnon, whatever.
Yeah, the Kaiser Family Foundation actually found that the CDC.gov site dropped 19 points in trustworthiness. So hospitals this unbelievable, vacuum to fill, and they did it.
Yep. So that was really lever one we pulled. Lever two was we got really smart about leveraging our email platform. And we had to find the sweet spot of how frequently to reach out to customers, but we have a 1.2 million email addresses in our database of our customers and 3 million total. So we're leveraging, the data within our CRM application to message consumers either in a personalized way. So when we launched telehealth, for example, we reached out to every consumer with a personalized message from their doctor that said, hey, we're now on telehealth. Here's a way to schedule. We're still open for in person, but if you prefer virtual, that is another avenue. And that click-through rate was something like 49 or 50% on those personalized messages. And that blows away any of like the, standard emails we send out. However, when we leverage like our own Dr. Fauci, our chief clinical officer, Margie Bessel, we're getting 20 to 30% click-throughs to watch videos or to, read some blog article that might've featured her or one of her team members. And so our email channel probably delivered 1 million page views to our blog last year. And before that, it was more like, tactics chasing strategy. It was just like, we'd occasionally like, oh, it'd be a good idea to put a blog article in an email, and we'd get, 60,000 clicks on a blog article. And we're like, oh, that's cool. But we didn't really have any basis on like, was that successful or not?
18 months from now, hopefully, you and I are at a conference. We're having
yes. In person.
In
Can't
person?
even imagine. I'm getting goosebumps just thinking about it.
And no mask.
Yes.
And you turn to me and you say to me, you know what, I kept up that empathy. I really did. I feel like I figured that out. But there's another tool that I added to my marketing toolbox, or my professional toolbox, or my personal toolbox. What was that besides that empathy?
Yeah, so I think in this new working environment, we're getting more creative with how we influence others, whether it's in person or virtual, because, I'm really good around people. Like this is the stuff I live for. Being holed up in my house for a year has taught me a little bit about like, how do I maintain like this extrovert personality? Those hallway chats that I feel like that I got the most productivity out of my own professional work at Banner was those like 5-minute sidebars that I'd have with people, and that would create something. And, it's just harder to do that. But I think, in 18 months, I will have mastered the skill set.
Yeah, I think that communication flow is incredibly important. Well, Chris, where can people find you?
LinkedIn, Chris Pace AZ. You'll find me there. I post probably 2 times a week. And that would be the best way to find me. I love LinkedIn. I love when people reach out and say they heard me talk.
Well, I think you did great. The detail was so fantastic. So
Thank you.
Thank you so much for being here. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, my pleasure.